Hello, everyone. Good day, wherever you are in the world. We have a bunch of people joining us from virtually, it seems like everywhere already responding in chat. My name is Mitch Ashley. I am Principal and GM of Techstrong Research, our analyst company, as well as CTO for Techstrong, the group that's helping produce this today's webinar. So we have a great topic, fantastic speaker, and I'm anticipating some great engagement from our audience. So I'll talk about that in just a little bit in a moment. But our topic today is CI/CD, how AI transforms continuous testing for IBM I. So I'm excited to introduce my speaker in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to mention that we will be talking in chat. I'll be conversing with you there. So if you have questions, you can put them into the Q&A tab. You can put have comments. We know your input as we're moving along here. Chris will be doing most of the dialogue, but feel free to post a comment, question, thought. This is interesting. Agree with this other participant, what they said, et cetera. We'll kind of weave some of that into the process as we go, as well as some time for Q&A at the end. Now, we are recording, and we will send a email with a link to the recording following the webinar, and also make the slides available to everyone. So at the end of today's webinar, we're giving away 4 Amazon gift cards, so stay tuned for that. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Chris White. Chris is Principal Product Manager. Great experience helping companies improve, how we're developing software on multi-platform environments. Something we were talking about a little bit before we got going with the webinar. So he's got some great responsibility at Rocket in their DevOps solution area. So Chris, why don't you also show a little bit of the agenda here? Some of the things that Chris could be covering. IBM I teams are in a state of forced change. I'm excited to hear about that. DevOps is here to stay. I totally agree with that. And let's hear what Chris has to say. The future of CI/CD and automated testing. Next steps, Rocket Software, Q&A. So a lot of great topics here, and I don't want to hold you back any longer from hearing from Chris. So Chris, why don't you take it away?
That's great. Thanks very much for the great intro. Let's start. So on a lot of development platforms, and that includes IBM I, there's a great push to try to standardize development tools and processes. Looking back to when organizations were first developing on IBM I, and when it was System 38 and then AS400, the work was mainly RPG, native green screen-based development, linear development methodologies, waterfall specifically. Developers designed and documented, coded, compiled, tested, and then after many months released their work into production. And that's at a time when RPG development was decades away from anyone even talking about going agile. And just to put that into some perspective, at that time there were no mobile phones, no cloud, no internet, and no RPG free. So back in 2001, the Agile Manifesto was created, and it was gradually adopted by many development teams over the next few decades. And by 2020, most development teams had adopted or were adopting more agile processes. However, the majority of IBM I teams, we were still using the tried and tested waterfall approach. Of course, there's many reasons for that, mainly because it worked, and if something works, why change it? The IBM I teams were often given an exception, and they weren't feeling the pressure to change. And there were very few tools for developers on IBM I trying to become agile. That's all in the past now, and IBM I development teams are expected to drop their traditional methodologies and join the rest of the DevOps teams. Talking to teams, the whole point of DevOps is to enable much closer collaboration between various teams involved in development. Teams like developers, obviously, operations, security, QA, release management, and even end users. And a quick note about end users. What we find is based upon their experience of other platforms, their expectation now is that IBM I development teams will continue to deliver new stuff far more quickly than they used to. And the users expect to be much more involved in that development process. On another point, I think we all appreciate that good RPG developers are becoming much harder to find. Many are retiring or reaching retirement age. And employers are now recruiting younger developers to fill the skills gaps on IBM I. And this next generation of IBM I developers have a different view of what development tools look like. And they're expecting modern tools and modern methodologies that help them create code rapidly. A lot of the time we see multiple technologies being used alongside RPG to solve problems. And at Rocket, we refer to this as multi-code or IBM I plus environments. And this is becoming more common in amongst our own customers, but it comes with its own set of problems. Things like communication of goals between the disparate teams, the alignment of processes. So where maybe developers using Java are working in a much more agile fashion than the RPG developers, but they have to work on the same process. And then ensuring that the code's in the right place at the right time to enable testing and deployment to production. So there's lots of stuff going on. Lots of problems that this comes with, but we honestly believe there's a real bright future. DevOps is essentially a set of practices and tools designed to help integrate and automate software development and IT operations. I think everybody is probably familiar with that description. Its purpose is to provide a means for improving and shortening the development lifecycle. One thing to note is it's not cookie cutter and one size doesn't fit all. I've noticed this 80-70-30 split that I talk about often amongst our own customer base. So I say that about 80% of our customers want to modernize their development process. 70% of that 80% are still looking for the right solution and the right tool set. And only 30% have a clear idea of where they want DevOps to take them. So, I'll refer to that again a couple of times in today's presentation. We see that effective DevOps infrastructure runs on two main principles, structure and flexibility. So let's take a look at structure first. Structure is about building a repeatable process. And to do this, we use automation and controls to drive productivity improvements. Any structured DevOps environment should include traceable process. And this is essential for making compliance, enforcement, and audit reporting easy. Automation really is the key here, as it has great potential to provide massive time savings. It can help eliminate costly errors. It can enable non-technical employees to participate in DevOps processes. And as I mentioned earlier, and I probably will deal with this a few times later in the presentation, it can help eliminate all of those manual tasks that developers hate that are associated with compliance reporting. I just wanted to give you two real-life examples of how automation can help. I was working with a banking customer a while ago, and they wanted to measure the benefit of implementing a DevOps solution, specifically our solution, but that's not specifically relevant. We took a sample change to an application. It was actually adding a field to a database file. And we measured the time taken to complete each of the steps the developers had to go through. And it totaled 18 hours. And if you're familiar with IBM I development, you'll understand why that figure is so high. We made the same change after we implemented our DevOps solution, and we reduced that time to 6 minutes. Now that's extreme, but it gives you an idea of how much extra time you could gain with the right automation in place. A second point is that IDC estimate that up to 70% of errors in production are caused by deployment issues. And that implies that you could eliminate up to 70% of production errors by simply automating deployment. So automation is key. And we'll be talking much more about automation as we go through today. The second principle you can see here is flexibility. And flexibility provides the support to experiment with new ideas and the freedom to make changes to process. Most businesses need to constantly experiment and innovate to keep ahead of their competition. And experimentation can happen in many places, with code, with UX, with delivery. In fact, anywhere the DevOps team believes that improvement could be made. But flexibility can only be enabled when there's structure to support it. Otherwise, flexibility can rapidly turn into some uncontrolled chaos. So the objective of all of this is to deliver new features more quickly to our users and at the same time improve the reliability and quality. And for this, we need to ensure the highest quality and with thorough testing. So you can see testing underpins the whole of that structure there. So to me, the evolution of DevOps is most pronounced these days in the world of testing. And I think the industry recognizes that, and it's certainly a common topic in nearly every call I have with a customer. As I mentioned earlier, we need to produce quality code very quickly to match customer demands to satisfy very rapidly changing market requirements. The common methodologies that we're all familiar with are waterfall, agile, and DevOps. There are others, but those are the three that we're most familiar with. And in my mind, you can think of the process as something like this. So waterfall is where we design something, we code it, we test it, we deploy it in that order. Something most of us are used to, but it doesn't address those applications that need rapid changes. And it can take many months. It's not unusual for a waterfall project to take 6 months from start to finish, or sometimes even longer. Agile is more of a philosophy that embraces change and strives for continuous delivery of software to the client. And it tries to encourage collaboration. This helps a lot, but it still doesn't fully cover all needs. And then we have DevOps. DevOps is about people using modern tools that bring development and operations together and to enable rapid software deliveries, all with an agile mindset in place. And this is where other technologies are, and this is where we see IBM development teams are heading. It's also where continuous integration and continuous delivery come in. It's focused on continuously delivering changes for testing and for ultimately for deployment. Now, testing cycles have to match delivery cycles. And that means CI/CD is not really possible without frequent and rapid testing. And more often than not, frequent and rapid testing is not possible without an automated solution. And that solution needs to include all things like automated builds, automated deployments, as we discussed earlier, automated testing. And in a multi-code environment, that's where developers are part of projects that involve more than one technology. This has to take into account the multiple development teams working on the same project, but using different approaches. So faster deliveries mean that we need to include testing as early as possible in the development lifecycle. And you've probably heard the term recently, shift-left testing. Today's world also means that we have to consider security implications much more thoroughly and much earlier than we did before. Again, this is probably something you're aware of as DevOps evolves into DevSecOps, which is probably a term most of you have heard. DevSecOps is outside of the scope of today's presentations, but we will cover that in a future webinar. Testing and security have become more of a focus recently, and those companies that have a lot of automation but who have adopted a flexible approach are ideally positioned to address these new requirements. Now, somewhere in this process, we need to link all of these parts together and involve the users to get their feedback and ensure we act upon that feedback in the process. So once we have that continuous loop in place, organizations have more freedom to innovate and experiment. And I mentioned those two things before. These are two important parts of making CI/CD work. Without automated testing, the cycle slows down and the potential for errors entering into a production environment increase. And in a worst case scenario, releases to production can grind to a halt. As I mentioned, it's almost impossible to implement any kind of CI/CD environment without some degree of automated testing. And I find that most developers want to do that, but the lack of available tools or solutions on IBM for automated testing makes that difficult. And that can lead developers into being forced to spend much more time going beyond the typical unit testing and having to start thoroughly testing their own changes. The alternative to that is to wait for a QA team to become free and to some kind of manual testing. And obviously that's going to lead to lost time, bottlenecks, delayed releases, and potentially poor quality. And which, for our customers, if you extrapolate that, that will result in loss of business and reduced revenue. The right tool set and the right implementation of that tool set are both critical. When we talk about CI/CD, we really mean being able to release changes faster. And the benefits of CI/CD are many, but they do include things like the quick innovation, like we talked about innovation, or I talked about innovation earlier. They allow you to roll back much more quickly in an emergency situation. For the business, they enable you to show a greater ROI much faster on new tool sets that you implement. And with CI/CD, makes things much easier for users to understand and learn. I Googled before today's presentation, how many changes does Amazon release each day? And one result suggested that it deploys 136,000 times per day. That's one deployment every 1.6 seconds. I'm guessing that most people on this call don't have environments with a degree of changes, but one of our customers does deploy 800 changes a day to 6,000 servers. And those figures are significantly less than Amazon, but even at that level, those figures would not be realistic without lots of automation in place. So we think testing is important, so we're going to focus on that for a while. This survey is a couple of years old, but I think it's still relevant. You can see here in 2021, in a GitHub survey, 57% of developers said that they released code twice as fast as they did before. And that's up from 25% just 2 years ago, or 2 years prior to the survey. And at that time, 75% said they were planning to use new AI or bots for testing and code reviews. And surprisingly, nearly 25% of respondents claimed full test automation. I'm surprised that's so high, but it shows you that that's where the market's driving. I should say these are not necessarily IBM customers. They're a mix of technologies. I think that we all recognize that traditionally IBM development teams tend to lag behind other development teams. However, they're now starting to explore ways of adopting more modern development technologies in their environments, or in our environments. We think that the future of DevOps is a combination of new and established technologies. This is not just for IBM, but it's going to be critical for IBM teams. As I mentioned, testing is a focus for many development teams. The GitHub survey showed that organizations are striving to reach 100% testing automation. For a while, we've been thinking about how we implement that in our own solutions. We have a testing tool, and we've been considering how to implement AI within that testing tool. And it was really brought home to us last year when a number of us started to experiment with ChatGPT, and we thought about how that possibly will affect our own tool set. It's difficult to predict the effect it's going to have on DevOps in general. There's huge scope in this area. However, we are convinced that AI is going to play an increasing role in testing. And we're convinced of that because we've put a lot of thought into how we're going to take that forward in our own tool set. But for AI to add value, it needs data. Now, there's many different types of data that AI needs, and we'll cover some of them in today's presentation. One of the key requirements for AI is information about how your users interact with your application, and we call this process discovery. Process discovery tries to understand how users engage with an application and how they engage with the data in that application. Information like the specific steps users take in different workflows, what data is accessed and when that data is accessed, how long users spend at certain points within the workflow, and then steps that are skipped or shortcuts that are used or workarounds that users take. As far as testing is concerned, this information reduces guesswork for developers and QA, and it makes it easier to build test plans, and this reduces the test cycle time. The process discovery is critical. Testing and process discovery are evolving into standard steps in the DevOps process. I think process discovery is going to be a requirement for accurate AI enablement. You need to know, or you really need to know how your users work. You need to know how they use your application, how they interact with it. And often that's not the way that the developers intended. This type of data could allow AI to help ensure that tests actually cover the areas not previously considered. And this would obviously improve application quality. So process discovery and AI might sound overwhelming, particularly if you're traditional. But knowing what's coming will allow you to prepare your approach for IBM. You'll be able to experiment and innovate much more quickly, and you could even start now. So let's talk about our vision of the evolution of test and the role that AI might play in that. So I mentioned evolution. Testing, we think, is on an evolutionary path, somewhere between basic manual testing and automated intelligent code fixing. You can see it on that graphic there. Right now, in our experience, most IBM developers sit between manual and automated testing, with some purely manual and a few fully automated. This is often different from multi-code environments, and multi-code environments tend to have the benefit of open testing tools. They have more pressure, and they have more pressure from teams to automate. IBM has its own rather specific set of requirements, 5250 data streams, for example. So in the next few slides, we're going to walk through this evolution and explain what changes at each step we think will happen, and a little bit about how to think about those changes. I think we probably all understand the first two, manual and automated testing. So we're going to skip straight through to guided testing. So understanding how an application is designed is important. What's key is how it's used. Let's take a CRM application as an example, and the workflow to create a new customer. It may be a standard option, but what testing teams need to understand is a lot of stuff. Who uses the application? What personas do those people represent? Is it just the contact center? What about accounting? What about sales? What about legal? What are they all doing in the application? Are they jumping from screen 12 to updating one field 90% of the time? Does the CRM team use workflow 1 whilst the accounting team goes through workflow 2 to achieve the same result? How do these teams use it? Are they all in the application 8 hours a day? How long do they spend creating new profiles or making an update? Perhaps the accounting is only in the application 10% compared with the CRM who's in there all day. But the workflow's accounting walkthrough is critical to managing the business finances. If you know what you need to test, you can build more comprehensive testing plans, reuse them, and test more often. I think integration testing, unit testing, and regression testing can all benefit from test plans built from process discovery. And if you build a repository of tests, you can theoretically turn 2 months of testing into 2 days or even 2 hours. The repository becomes the knowledge base for the team and is continuously updated, getting better over time. It's learning. One of the things we're working on, as I mentioned earlier on, is how we can use this data to guide users through creating testing scenarios. And then during testing, using the same data to ensure the tests were sufficiently comprehensive to be valid. So that's guided. That's what we think guided testing is. So predictive testing. Once you've got the data from process discovery, you're heading towards shift left testing, and you can start to add artificial intelligence to your testing process. The AI will know what to test when code starts changing. It could even trigger testing before QA needs to know that it needs testing. And this in turn provides immediate feedback to developers and reduces the workload on the testing team. The AI will need the rules by which it tests your code. And probably the AI vendor will provide a standard set of rules, but you probably need to customize the model based upon your own local processes. you'll find that AI built in other parts of the DevOps process. For example, automated build processing. However, you may need to build nuances into the model when you run your own tests. For example, you may want to tell the AI model to pull a particular library or extract data from a test repository to test against. That might all depend on the workflow that's being updated. So AI can also be built to establish relationships between tests, even between tests that are already executed and changes that are made. So AI could say to you when you run a test, most developers who change this program ran test plan 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you want to add that to your commit? So it can prompt developers to run tests based on previous information that it's learned. And I look at that rather like buying a printer ink cartridge from Amazon. It prompts me to buy the print head cleaner and some paper that's recommended for the printer that I bought the cartridge for. And this is all based upon AI data created from previous customer interactions. So let's talk about what we call quality assistant. AI could be your personal quality assistant. It could make recommendations about how to fix code based on failed tests that the AI model ran in the past. Or it could flag untested code. It could tell you, you changed this part over here, but you haven't tested it, or you haven't tested it as comprehensively as you did before. Are you sure you want to continue? So AI can pull you up when it believes that you haven't tested as comprehensively as you need to. Or it could prompt you to make sure you want to test code from a workflow that's not recorded in the process discovery, which could mean that the process is not fully understood. So it can help you understand your application as well. The developers complete their work and commit the code back to the system. The system identifies what's been changed and selects or creates the appropriate test, executes them, and then provides the results with suggestion on how to fix failures. And then it repeats that until everything works. So that's what we refer to as quality assistant. And then we get to intelligent code fix. And at this stage of the evolution in testing, we expect machine learning to step in, taking the intelligence built into the AI model and fine-tuning it to fine-tuning the rules to meet reality, perhaps even improving on the intelligence itself. For example, sometimes you might want to change how something is compiled and tested in a particular solution. The AI should be able to understand that this is the case and update the rules based upon the information. So we see 3 ways that this could be incorporated into testing. Firstly, the machine learning model can notice when you omit a particular test that you typically run and then run it for you. Secondly, the AI will notice that the discovery data indicates that the users engage differently with your application and recommend a different approach to testing. And thirdly, the machine learning could also review code that's been committed, ensure that testing is appropriate and comprehensive, adding a test to the queue if it's already available, or pushing the request to either QA or the developer to create a new test to add. In a fully advanced scenario, the machine learning model could create the test, run it, and do a code fix without any human intervention. This is the same as quality assistant, but it will attempt to fix the code errors and deployment problems itself. So we talked about innovation a couple of times earlier. I think this is probable that intelligent testing will enable an explosion of innovation. QA teams can build and share comprehensive test plans with developers. Developers will be able to identify and fix problems more quickly and build higher quality code. And the result is the ability to innovate more rapidly. The key here is to test comprehensively, automatically, and shift left to test much earlier in the cycle. We always have to remember that there will be fixed requests based upon user feedback. But pushing higher quality code to production more quickly will increase the speed of the CI/CD cycle and reduce these. So this is going to enable companies to be more competitive, uncover more opportunities for improving opportunities, and productivity, and align more quickly and closely with what the market is looking for. Okay, so how does intelligent code fixing change an organization's approach to RPG? It's possible that AI might take over both the development and the testing of RPG code. And that way will minimize errors and resource challenges for IBM systems. It's possible that AI might become the IT admin, the developer, and the QA team for RPG all in one. That's almost certainly years away, but based upon the way we see AI progress, it is a possibility. So I'm guessing everybody's here has heard recent news reports about the concerns towards AI. And this year we've seen a letter signed by hundreds of leading engineers and scientists, including Steve Wozniak, pushing for a halt to AI model development for a period of time, for 6 months. And the aim of that would be to give the industry time to review and provide recommendations on policies and procedures that address some of the serious ethical challenges that go with AI. In addition, some governments are starting to ban the use of ChatGPT. Italy announced a temporary halt of the processing of Italian users' data amid a probe into suspected breach of European strict privacy regulations, is an example. Other challenges of AI that have already been experienced stem from unconscious bias being built into the AI models. Claims that AI can be racist and sexist appear to be true, but are very concerning. AI is the result of huge amounts of data. It's becoming obvious that governance around what data we use to train AI and how we manage that data is essential. And if we're not really careful, we risk a massive PR disaster. Now, most of the concerns are towards AI are driven by the limitations of the technology. Specifically, AI has no common sense. It cannot understand the context and meaning, which can lead to errors and misinterpretations. There's a high cost associated with training and managing AIs. They all need a large amount of accurate, high quality data, and they have to be fed new data constantly. Code ownership is another area. AI doesn't create anything new. It generates answers based upon what it's seen in the data that it's given. So questions like who owns the code if a development team decides to use AI to build code and that AI's data uses input from a third-party code. And then transparency. AI algorithms can be very complex and difficult to understand. And this complexity is only going to grow over time. And the risk this black box poses will grow past decision making, potentially without manual review. So every organization will need to evaluate their risk tolerance as far as AI is concerned. As an IBM customer, you're probably trying to decide what the future development environment in your company looks like and how AI might affect that. So let's look at a few issues we believe are key considerations for you. Before you start thinking about AI, it might be helpful to figure out what kind of company you are. Are you IBM only? Are you a company where IBM is the center of IT with other peripheral systems? Or are you a company where IBM is part of a more complex IT environment with multiple development technologies? So once you've thought about that, you should consider the following. Is your environment likely to change in the coming years? Your answer probably determines your approach to AI. And things like, do you have the resources to support AI? And is your environment complex enough to trigger a need for it? I suspect that you will encounter AI, even if you're an IBM only shop. So you need to think about how you want to approach it. We see most companies are in the second category. That's where IBM is central to the network, but there are other technologies at work, often interconnected, to solve the same problem. We probably have customers in category 3, but those organizations tend to be very large organizations. I think category 2 and category 3 companies, it's those companies that will benefit most from adopting AI and new modern development technologies for their development teams. And those companies are usually already on the path to planning how to take advantage of new technology, or they're planning how to start down that path. Most of our IBM customers are already considering planning and implementing modern development tools and processes, including Agile and DevOps. And as I mentioned a few times earlier, I estimate this is about 80% of our customer base. But competitive markets mean that rapid software deliveries are no longer a nice to have for most development teams. AI is fast and it's iterative by design, and new data outcomes must be continuously fed into its algorithms for it to work. If an IBM development team speeds up its adoption of new DevOps processes and modernization processes, the amount of data available for process discovery will increase significantly, and that means feedback to the AI models will be much faster, allowing for rapid tuning in those models. An agile DevOps approach could make it much easier for businesses to quickly test new tools and adjust based upon what works for them. For example, maybe you adopt Git for your source control on IBM, but you find that it doesn't really provide the functionality you had in your previous tool. But with an agile approach to DevOps, you could make adjustments very quickly to solve that problem. No matter how much automated testing you have, you'll still need to do manual testing. But the good news is QA won't need to look for superficial bugs like color issues, spelling errors, or the location of fields on a screen, because automated AI-based testing will identify and eliminate those quickly. And that will allow QA to focus on higher level issues that could affect the functionality and usability of the application. The AI can also spend more time figuring out what needs to be tested and building more comprehensive test case based upon the process discovery we talked about earlier on. So as I mentioned, data needs to be continuously fed for AI to work well. It's an iterative process by design. AI relies on high quality historical data. It needs a constant supply of that data to keep it updated and able to make good decisions. It's data which feeds the model that fine tunes the output. As a baseline, you should have a data strategy to ensure the availability, quality, and security of your data, especially if that data contains personal identifiable information, PII. So a strategy should include data governance policies. How do you handle PII and ensure biases are not built into models? You need to include investment in data infrastructure. You need to build an AI team to help build and monitor models. And you need to train employees on best practices for data management. The quality and type of data that you collect requires careful thought, and it should meet all of these requirements. It should be unbiased, comprehensive, secure. To deal with PII, it needs to be anonymized. It must be representative to make sure testing is appropriate, and it needs to be continuously updated. Because AI will rely heavily on good historical data to get started, you should start collecting that data today. And the types of data that you can already collect will be things like copies of databases, source code, data on workflows. How did your users engage with the database and the application? Information on things, on how things work. For example, if you want AI to process insurance claims for the United States, you must make sure that it understands how insurance is regulated in the United States. and then different language models. One of the easiest ways to get going today would be to keep your audit logs each year. However, to collect all the relevant data, you'll need a recorder that understands the ins and outs of the IBM system. It should be able to track engagement with an application, such as the libraries accessed, the application's business logic, and how it engages with other applications, as well as the steps that users take to go through the application. There's a couple of new terms that you'll hear, so I just thought I'd give a brief explanation of each. Machine learning operations, MLOps. Machine learning operations refer to the practice of applying DevOps principles to the machine learning lifecycle. MLOps aims to streamline and automate the entire ML pipeline, from data preparation and model development to deployment, to monitoring, and then to maintenance. And then model operations. Model operations is a practice of applying DevOps principles to the operational artificial intelligence models. Again, from development to deployment and then maintenance. And you'll see that MLOps is a subset of model ops. Typically, data collection and R&D happen in different departments of a company, which is a potential bottleneck when considering time to market. To take advantage of machine learning within DevOps, the ML code should be promoted through the development lifecycle. DevOps teams could coordinate closely with MLOps, or MLOps teams as DevOps should also adopt AI engineering best practices to better align with the MLOps or model ops teams. I'd like to add one more piece of advice, and that's to use tools that integrate well. And that's easier said than done, especially in an IBM world. In general, you don't want tools or processes that run in isolation. It's not only complicated to retrieve data, but it also increases the chance of error if the handoff between the functions is manual. So just like you don't want tools or processes to be run in isolation, you don't want AI to be run in isolation either. For AI to be able to combine multiple functions, handoff between those functions should be automated and as smooth as possible. For example, if you use process delivery to control testing, AI must make appropriate testing recommendations, execute them, receive feedback, and understand the feedback. That should all be seamlessly automated. The automated handoff between modernization tools and DevOps needs to be there for AI to trigger intelligent workflows. My recommendation is that you ensure any tools you're using today or tomorrow are integrated. And they should be integrated to ensure the efficient handoff between IT functions, to reduce or eliminate the risk associated with introducing errors at manual or disjointed points, and so that you can focus on your applications and not your toolset integration. So look for tools that integrate well, so the handoff between the functions is smooth and automated. At Rocket, we've built out an integrated portfolio of IBM tools that help organizations optimize their IBM strategies. Except for IBM, we are the only company who offers such a breadth of solutions that support IBM. Organizations who use more than one IBM product from us typically see many benefits. The first, it helps them align their IT with their business. When the tools you use inherently work together, you remove the gaps between products that could impede your ability to improve productivity, and that mask opportunities to automate across functions. In addition, we help customers in many IBM domains, including replication, application modernization, DevOps, testing, and non-IBM workers to support the management and modernization of your IBM without the need for deep code or system experience. We provide compliance solutions that save some of our customers up to 30% of their annual IT budgets. And finally, we build integration into our tool sets that to allow our tools to communicate with each other and other IBM modernization tools from other vendors. For the last 33 years, Rocket has been in partnership with customers all over the world to help them solve their complex IT challenges. And these are 3 areas that we offer support in: so application modernization, data modernization, and infrastructure modernization. Okay, so that's the end of my slide deck, and now is a chance to that I can pause to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Covered a lot of territory there. So I wish we had about another hour to do Q&A with you. One of the things that would be great, you laid out sort of the progression of how AI, might appear in the software development, software testing process with process discovery, predictive testing, intelligent code fix. We're already seeing help in the development side, assisted code generation of things. When do you think are we already seeing AI in the testing side of this? Or if not, when do you think we'll see more of that?
So this is really, we find this difficult to predict. A year ago, we hadn't thought about AI in testing. And today, as an organization, we're thinking about how we build AI, and we're quite advanced in our design of how we're going to do that. So we've gone from nothing to full consideration in less than 12 months. And when you look at tools like ChatGPT and how advanced that is, and how it can and what it can produce in rapid amounts of times, I wonder how fast that technology is going to grow. So it's really difficult to predict that. So I'd like to, by this time next year, I'm hoping our testing solution will be able to get quite a way through that, certainly to predictive testing. But intelligent code fixing, that's another question altogether.
Code fixing, and then there's intelligent code fixing. I think
right.
all of us are at the incorporating AI, whether we're in an IT world or a product, a service company. How do we incorporate it? We want to do it well, not just roll out something that suddenly has ChatGPT embedded within it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to do the right thing by your customers. You don't want to send them down a path, before you're ready, it's ready.
Yeah, you're exactly, you're spot on there. It would be very easy for us to run away with this very quickly, and we're trying to be very considered about it.
We're seeing now, ChatGPT with its LLM. We're seeing more domain-specific LLMs around software development and software testing emerging almost every day. Matter of fact, there was an announcement today about a security testing LLM. It seems like that's part of incorporating really specialized data, specific data to help create relevant content, relevant testing recommendations, even when you get to code fixes, et cetera. A lot of it seems like really harnessing and honing how we create those domain-specific LLMs for software testing, security testing, et cetera. You agree with that? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. So one of our participants also asked, let me pull that question up. They're asking about what are some of the challenges that you see as you've worked, maybe adopting AI in your own organization as you're also working with customers. What are maybe challenging points or issues or things that come up as you're looking to adopt AI in your development and your testing, et cetera? You mentioned some of the issues around, bias and who owns the code, things like that. Any other thoughts on organizational challenges?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I only heard the second kind of 5 seconds of that.
Yeah, are there what kind of challenges do you see organizations facing as they look at adopting AI in their continuous testing process or other parts of their kind of software development?
Well, the one you mentioned just now is, it's easy to run away and make some assumptions on what AI needs to be based on. It's difficult to know what data and how to analyze that data. So the analysis of data is hard. it's different. It's what, some of the things what we're figuring out is what we interface with, and how other vendors that we integrate with naturally, what they're doing, and how we might form relationships with their AI. And there doesn't seem to be a good answer to that at the moment. There's lots of development going on in isolation around AI. So that's something that we think is it's not a, well, I guess it is a problem. Yeah, it's a problem.
You mentioned a lot of areas, and I'm curious. Data is one of the things that you mentioned, and sort of AI ops, or the operational part of AI, is almost really a data ops challenge, right? Data management challenge. Do you expect data teams to be woven into the development and ops teams over time, or will they continue to be separate but kind of work in parallel?
I think there'll be a kind of a combination of that. I think data ops is going to be an area of great focus in the future, particularly with AI and the misuse of data. We've all seen how data can be misused to misrepresent people and products and organizations. So I think there's going to be regulation and restrictions brought into that over the coming months and years. And I think the data ops teams are going to have to take a greater role in all areas of the business now, because data touches all areas. So I think that those data teams are going to be more involved with development as we start to incorporate AI into development processes. So I think there'll be, developers will need to be trained in data management, but I think that the data operations teams are going to have a much greater role overall in how the developers conduct their business.
Very good. One of our participants today was asking about how AI plays a role in transforming continuous testing in IBM I plus environments. Your product. Anything you want to add to what you've already said about either where it is today or will show up in that continuous testing process?
So yeah. So I mentioned, we're thinking about how we have an IBM I testing solution, an automated testing solution, and just like other companies are doing the same kind of thing, we're considering where AI fits into that, and we've also, we've already thought about lots of things that I mentioned in today's presentation. So when you change something, we want our solution to be able to use AI to recommend tests for that thing that you've changed, and it's going to know that by learning about what you tested before. We also have the process discovery solution that monitors how users interact with applications, and can provide some pretty neat statistics and graphs and heat maps on information about how those users navigate through various functions in your application. So we're looking at how we combine that into the solution to make sure that when you test something, it's actually, you're testing how the user uses the application. So those are the types of things that we're more than thinking about already. But we're not jumping too far ahead because of the rapidly changing technologies.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, we have time for one more question. I also want to mention, just FYI, pinned to the top of our chat, it's also available in handouts, is some information, the handouts from Chris's talk, and some great information, a link to more information you can get on the Rocket site. One of the things we talk about is managing or stepping up to the speed and the pace of which the business wants to operate, and how we deliver software. Certainly DevOps and repeatable automated processes are part of doing that. Quality is also a part of, we want to continue to offer, quality software that we're producing, maybe more rapidly. One of the things that we can do by automation, maybe with AI, is improving or removing defects. You mentioned fixing defects as well. Do you think AI is going to have a significant impact on quality, or do you think it's more impacted in other areas?
I think AI and testing is going to have a significant impact on the whole development lifecycle, because it's going to free up large amounts of, well, first of all, it's going to allow developers to create new features and functions much more rapidly, because it's going to reduce the time necessary for testing. And it's going to reduce the burden on QA teams. So QA teams can focus more on functional testing rather than feature testing, or making sure the screen has the right color on it, or the field's in the right place. So I think where AI and automated testing work together to take over the responsibilities of testing, developers are going to be able to produce more. They're going to be able to innovate much faster. And those companies that start to adopt more modern development processes on IBM specifically are going to feel the benefits of that very quickly, because they're going to be able to produce much more rapidly, or with much higher quality. And I think that's going to be specifically aided by AI and automated testing, but also by I talked about DevOps and modern DevOps tool sets for IBM, and that's something, as I said, we're noticing in our customers. About 80% of our customers, or 80% of our customers, want to modernize their tool sets, and and generally they want to modernize them because they can produce code faster and of higher quality, and open up the development environments to more developers who are who have experience with other platforms. So I think when you adopt modern development tools on IBM and you adopt integrated testing, and once we can get AI properly built into that automated testing, I think that's going to have a significant positive impact on development life cycles.
Well, fantastic, Chris. We appreciate you sharing with us all your thoughts, and maybe a little bit of prediction here. It's tough to know where all of this is going. It's moving so fast, but your depth of thought you put into how this impacts and will benefit testing and continuous testing, as well as our larger development process, is greatly appreciated. So thanks to you, and thanks to the Rocket Software team for bringing this to us today. I want to take care of a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, I want to announce our gift card winners. We have 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift cards. Those winners are Hafsa J, Marita K, Jason M, and Yvonne V. The good folks at Techstrong Learning will be reaching out about how you get a hold of those. Also, I mentioned to everyone that in addition to the handouts, we've recorded today's webinar and that Chris's talk, and that'll be sent to you via email with a link to watch it again, share it with others. And we definitely would recommend, given the topic, please think about who you work with, because I'm sure they can benefit from hearing Chris's talk, as well as maybe you want to watch it a second time. So thanks for joining us today, Chris. It's been fantastic having you speak and chatting with you, and we hope we get to do this with you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for attending today, and we will see you again soon.